Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman unveiled the eighth consecutive union budget today. The income tax rebates that she announced has become the biggest talking point as of now. There were schemes announced for the MSME sector, for women, for farmers, for education sector. Also, several announcements for boosting exports we heard earlier in the budget speech of Union Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. So, from capex to cash in people's hands, that seems to be the thrust for the Union Finance Minister. And of course, she has unveiled tax relief for middle class to fuel consumption boost. New tax reforms, Make in India push, key national missions, bonanza literally, and of course, some key announcements for the election bound state of Bihar. All of that packed in Union Budget 2025. To discuss all of this, I am joined here on the program by experts from various different sectors, Mr. Somil Shethia, who's the COO of Graanth Realty, and Amit Srivastava, founder and chief catalyst of Nutrify today. Let me introduce both the gentlemen here on the program. Welcome, Amit. Thank you for joining us. And Somil Shethia, thank you very much for joining us here on Free Press Journal. I would like to begin by asking both of you to give us your first observations of the budget. The talking points, of course, like I already mentioned, has been the tax rebates. Will it boost growth? Will it really end up with, with leaving more cash in the hands of the consumer? Let's just have your opening remarks. You go first, Mr. Srivastava.
Sure, thank you. I believe that this budget is quite common man friendly, and as it is seen that there's a revised income tax slabs, and then of course there's a standard deduction for salaried individuals that has been revised, and the best thing is a fair relaxation for the senior citizen. So this
Yeah.
is from the common man perspective, but then we should also keep in mind that cash in hand is worthwhile when it is put to use, and that typically means that can that cash be used for better products in India. And I can
Hmm.
talk from the healthcare perspective. I think it's a mixed bag, but then of course there has been a good input impetus on research based incentive programs that
Yeah.
is driving the first prime agenda that the government has always maintained, that India should become the hub of intellectual properties. So
Hmm.
these kind of incentive programs will lead to higher IPs into the market, and that would also mean premiumization of products in the international exports and so on. So I think broadly it looks like a pretty balanced budget this year.
Right. Is it balanced in your perspective as well, Mr. Somil Shethia? Because some, of course, political reactions coming more from the perspective of it's favoring one state, it's looking at electoral benefits. At the same time, the popular measures, because all eyes were on taxes and all eyes were on the middle class. So that part is taken care of. Your thoughts, Somil Shethia?
Firstly, good evening, everyone, and it's an absolute honor here to be here today. And firstly, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to everybody here and for inviting me to this esteemed panel discussion. Now, on the budget part, as we've seen, our finance minister, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, has laid down the journey, which is based on the four engines of agricultural, MSME, investments, and exports. And
Yeah.
to guide this journey, there are three catalysts that they have identified. One, the first is the fuel, which they have brought a lot of reforms in terms of taxation, export incentives, and other reforms that they've brought in. The second is the guiding spirit. There's a lot of inclusivity that they have added into this budget reforms. And
Mhm.
third, and the most important, the destination is the Viksit Bharat, right? So all
Yeah.
this leading towards the Viksit Bharat, overall, it's been a very positive and very thoughtful approach from a budget perspective, which has empowered, given a lot of empowerment to the common man and the middle class, which they have been hoping for over the last couple of years.
Right. If we can look at the food industry specifically, Mr. Srivastav, food prices, inflation in the food industry, coming from a sector related to food and nutrition, what are your concerns? What are your takeaways specifically for your sector?
There are different perspective to one news. Uh, I would take a positive one because that's certainly measurable. So
Hmm.
if you look at it very carefully, I just mentioned that the government is very much focused towards building the intellectual property, and it's drilling down right to the farming level. So if you see, they've come up with one of course, a lot of investment is going into research and innovation of supply chain in the entire food chain. what it
Okay.
means is what it means is, first of all, the raw material of food or food tech products needs
Hmm.
to have. Today we have seen how many times India has been pulled up in the global media for heavy metal contamination and so on. Today, the entire investment that this budget is talking about is in the entire supply chain traceability, efficiency, and that typically means that raw material, which is the farming products, now would be more profitable because now they would be able to not only reach to the factories or to the end consumer much faster, leading to reduction in losses, but also fuel the growth of high premium sector, which is nutraceuticals, because in nutraceuticals you need a high quality of raw material to do extraction and bioactives, which is used in a high end market. So that would
Right.
also fuel a revenue flow into the farming sector. So I believe that right from farming sector to making the supply chain very efficient, investing into this is the fundamental need to even fortify the entire other side of the story, which is whether you talk of food security, whether you talk of the food tech or nutraceuticals or even phytopharmaceuticals, just to take it to the other end.
Hmm. Right. The allocation, the budget allocation for the health sector has always been a concern. Whether there is enough focus, enough thrust,
Hmm.
enough money, practically, that is being set aside for this
That is a
sector.
little bit concern, yeah, because if
Hmm.
you look at broad, I would let pharmaceutical industry to comment on it, but
Hmm.
looks like it isn't as attractive for pharmaceuticals. But if I look from nutraceuticals, from health perspective, uh, while it may not have offered much, but it certainly has offered quite a bit on fundamentals, which is research and supply chain.
Yeah. Mr. Somil Shethia, when it comes to the real estate industry, what are the changes that you have picked up in the union budget? Are there any changes in, say, housing or commercial property tax that could impact or affect the real estate development or investment? In terms of taxes, also for those who want to invest in property, is there any relief in the taxes that one has to pay?
Yeah. Yeah, so there have been couple of positive changes that have come in. Firstly, the nil tax slab rate has been increased to 12 lakhs. So this
Yeah,
gives some additional cash in the hands of the common people, that will help them, covering their loan EMIs and all. The
yeah.
second, what we have come across is the relaxation given in terms of TDS, which is deducted on rent.
Hmm.
Normally, the annual rent, when it was about 240,000 rupees, you have to pay TDS, deduct TDS on that. That limit has now been increased to 6 lakhs. So the annual rent, when is up and above 6 lakhs, then it is when the TDS deduction will get triggered for deduction. And
Yeah.
thirdly, what and one of the most critical reforms what we see is come in that earlier as a individual we could have two properties, but one was a free property and second property was a taxable property. So now they have allowed two properties to be tax free. So that is
Yeah.
going to be one of the most important reforms which will help bring in more purchasing powers, because that will help the individuals and the common man to have more free income in their hands to deploy it again in further real estate developments.
Yeah, but in terms of making housing affordable,
Yeah.
affordability to enhance is does the budget facilitate affordability for those aspiring to buy a new home?
From an affordability perspective, like we've been, as an industry, we've been asking for reforms in the affordable limit criterias, and we are hoping that government will consider the same and bring those reforms which will help this affordability to reach the target.
Yeah. So there are areas, there are gaps,
Yeah.
and we can't exactly say all those gaps have been closed. There's an attempt, there's an intent one can see.
Yeah.
I would like to play out some reactions. Most of them, I think, are political reactions, but that's just how it is. It is still important to get a perspective from what the other side of the political divide and their leaders have to say and how they have reacted. So let's quickly listen in to some of these top voices from the industry as well as from the political class.
Principle
Before
applies here. And if I just take out some important facets of this budget, I think several sectors where there is potential to create a lot of economic activity and jobs, specific targeted measures have taken place, right from agriculture, which employs nearly half of India's workforce, MSME, which again a very labor intensive sectors, and there is also the sector of exports that has been focused upon, and also there is very clearly investment in the economy in areas that require for India to grow and thrive, whether it's human capital development, whether it's to reform urban infrastructure and urban governance, to unlock the potential of future-facing technologies, a lot of focus on innovation, a lot of focus on areas such as which are important from climate transition, for example, the target on nuclear plants. So several important announcements there. And above all, I think very important, a lot of focus on reform and ease of doing business, and particularly about collaboration with states on some of these sectoral interventions and incentivization towards reforms. I think this is a very important focus that the budget has brought in, because the next set of
we are pausing it here, I want to take a quick reaction. Coming to you, Mr. Amit Srivastava. Yes, anything that you would like to add to that? And I also want to ask you a very important question about how now, since the rupee has fallen in relation to the dollar, and the government intends to boost exports to take advantage of that in terms of enhancing that area in order to have more in exports. Do you see anything that can benefit the food sector, anything that the government has initiated to take advantage of this situation where you boost exports in particular?
Absolutely. Just I heard him saying so. Yes, one good thing is that there's a separate budget now for deep tech, which incidentally is a hot subject, and we as Nutrify today, of course, are into deep tech in nutrition. So that's a good news. But then talking of exports, I would rather, so in my dealing with international markets in when it comes to food and nutrition, the major concern today is not about the pricing. The major concern is about traceability, sustainability of the raw material, whether it is food raw material or else the processed raw material. That has mostly remained opaque, and that's why our neighboring country has always gained an advantage. Now, with the government trying to address the fundamentals, so even if you come up with a lot of schemes for exports, we are falling flat on the supply chain fundamentals, not on the other side of it. So, till the
Yeah.
time fundamentals
Is
are
there a
not
huge
addressed,
dependence on China, and is that a concern?
yeah,
Because the way the supply chain network is right now and the way the geopolitics is right now,
exactly.
there are a lot of things caught in the crossfire, isn't it?
Absolutely. So look at the supply chain today. When we work with the US clients, they directly compare us with the supply chain accessibility and traceability with China, and which India is not able to provide. And as a result, companies have invested on their own to provide that traceability. But you know what? As a company, I can limit it to my infrastructure and not the national infrastructure, which is where the big competition is, because China talks of national infrastructure to supply chain traceability, and
Yeah.
that is a major concern. So I think I'm more excited about addressing the fundamentals before jumping onto export, because you cannot have exports if your fundamentals are not right.
And similarly, I mean, the same would apply when it comes to import to somewhere reduce dependence on imports, because if the value of of our currency is now weak, then there has to be an effort to reduce dependence on imports. Anything on that you would like to add?
Currently, the imports, India is very import heavy
Yeah.
in some fields of food. So food, not that much as it would be food tech, and the tertiary branches like nutraceuticals or supplements. So it's very heavy on import, and one of the reason of heavy dependency of import is uh, the non-availability of infrastructure or support for research work in India. That is
Yeah.
one. Second thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, the big question mark on supply chain from India. So, by the way, this budget addresses both of them. Well, time will tell the outcome, but this will attract investment into India, investment into research and development in nutraceuticals, research and food tech. And if that work begins in India, and if the supply chain is addressed through this budget, I believe the research should start visible sometime in 2 years from now, where the impact of import reduction can begin, because there won't be any immediate impact for sure, but this will lead to at least next 2 to 3 years showing impact on reduction of imports.
Yeah, I'll play out some more reactions and then go to Mr. Somil Shethia. Let's
Reform
listen
that
in
have
to
to
some
happen
more
that
of
have to
these
happen
inputs that are coming.
at the state multiplier effect on the
Let's
economy.
go.
सैलरी पर्सनस के लिए 12,75,000 के 12 लाख नहीं, सैलरी पर्सनस के लिए 12,75,000 तक है, क्योंकि 75,000 स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन है जहाँ पे वो बेसिक सेविंग्स भी कर सकते हैं। और ये जिस स्लैब को बढ़ाया गया है उससे अपने एडिशनल सेविंग्स को भी मद्देनजर रख के तो आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। ओवरऑल किस तरह दिखते हैं? मिला जुला बजट है, अच्छा बजट है, हर तरह से एक अच्छी नजरिए से इसको देखा जा रहा है। तो लगता है कि एक आम आदमी के लिए काफी अच्छा रहेगा, और इंडस्ट्रीज को भी काफी कुछ इसमें दिया गया है, वुमेन एंटरप्रेन्योर वुमेन के लिए भी काफी कुछ। सर ये 5 लाख SC/ST वुमेन्स के लिए 2 करोड़ तक के लोन के प्रावधान किया गया है, किसान के लिए क्रेडिट लोन का प्रावधान किया गया है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट में नए एयरपोर्ट्स के लिए प्रोविजंस किए गए हैं, देन टूरिस्ट डेस्टिनेशंस को बढ़ाने के लिए प्रोविजंस किए हैं। एक ओवरऑल अच्छा मिला जुला बजट है, और आम आदमी के लिए मेरे को लगता है एक बेहतरीन बजट रहेगा ये।
So, Mr. Swamil, I'll come back to the reactions again. In terms of capex, in terms of capital expenditure, infrastructure focus, not much apparently has changed from last time. In fact, there is no increase. How do you assess that? Is that a deliberate move? Were there certain compulsions owing to which the expenditure on infrastructure has been limited, has not exceeded the previous rate of the previous budget?
So if you look at the overall infrastructure at an Indian global level, right, there have been a lot of infrastructure developments being carried out throughout India, and all these are these stepping stones which have been laid down by the government. While when we are targeting to bring in tourism, we are targeting to bring in attract a lot of additional foreign investments into the country and make it a global hub. So all these are the
Yeah.
stepping stones which have been laid down, and moving forward with all the new reforms that have been laid down today, this is going to help us do more business, become a superpower, and become the global hub. So overall, it's very much positive, and we look it forward as to how these outlines will come in the future.
Right. I want to play out some more reactions and then we'll come for closing comments to the both guests. Let's listen in.
तो स्टार्टअप्स के लिए इन्होंने फंड ऑफ फंड्स का अनाउंसमेंट किया है. इट विल इनेबल लिक्विडिटी इन द स्टार्टअप स्पेस एंड होपफुली मनी विल गो टू द राइट कंपनीज, और इससे जॉब्स वगैरह क्रिएट होंगे बाय दिस. एंड ओवरऑल सेकंड थिंग इज दैट द एक्सेस टू स्टार्टअप क्रेडिट तो स्टार्टअप और एमएसएमई की लोन की जो सुविधा है लोग प्रोवाइड करने के लिए अनाउंस किया है, वो भी स्टार्टअप्स को बहुत बेनिफिट करेगा। इनकम टैक्स स्लैब के अंदर एक आम जन के मिडिल क्लास हाउस होल्ड के अंदर मनी इन हैंड बचेगा। तो मनी इन हैंड बचता है तो फिर आप इन्वेस्टमेंट्स एक्सपेंडिचर दोनों करते हैं, तो एक कंज्यूमर बेस्ड इकोनॉमी बनेगी तो देश की ग्रोथ के लिए फायदा होगा। बजट काफी अच्छा अनाउंस किया है। बहुत टाइम से ये पर्सनल टैक्स स्लैब्स के लिए ऊपर सीमा बढ़ाने की बात कर रहे थे, तो इसके अंदर काफी बड़ी छूट दी गई है, तो इससे कंज्यूमर इकोनॉमी काफी बढ़ेगी और मैं काफी उत्साहित हूँ बजट देख के।
Of course, the biggest is the personal tax change, which was anticipated, and we had expected 10 lakhs. I think she has given 12 lakhs. This has been a very good exemption. I think this will boost people's incomes, and this will help consumption. This will lead to increase in capacity creation, more investment in capex, and expansion of jobs, hopefully. So it will be a multiplier effect, in my opinion. This will be an excellent move in the right direction.
So how do you see the fiscal deficit thing? Because it's taken at 40.
Fiscal deficit target has been set at 4.4. We are expecting 4.8. I think 4.8 being maintained is a very good sign. I believe that buoyancy in tax revenues is demonstrating this. Confidence is high that with these changes, the tax revenues will further boost up. Manufacturing will boost up. Indirect taxes will also go up, so that GST collections will be also better. I think that is exactly what she is counting on, and we have to demonstrate that we do the right thing as a nation as well, as
So
people.
big announcements are done for the agri sector, infra sector, and the MSME sector particularly. So how do you see those sectors being focused on?
It's an excellent suggestion and good moves. I believe we need to understand the fine print most effectively to see the impact of those in the short term and in the medium term and in the long term. But I think it's the right moves in the right direction for unleashing the power of manufacturing capability and increasing the agricultural productivity.
Power has been given a specific targeted aim for the next 5 years and 6 years. Atomic energy has been especially targeted to build up to 100 gigabits by 2033.
I think that's an excellent move because atomic energy, while people have fears, she's also talked about how she'll capture the acts to prevent the accidents and other things and compensation if there is anything. But I think that is a very good move. Nuclear power is good, is safe, and it's in India's interest.
It is very positive. I think one was could be low income group was expecting relief, but I think she has given much more than expectation. Up to 12 lakhs, that is income without capital gains. There will be no.
So let's then talk about that a bit as we close the conversation with the two of you. The 12 lakh slab that has now been fixed for no tax up to 12 lakhs per annum income. A very, very welcome move, obviously. And I just heard the Prime Minister say that this is going to leave more money in your pockets. But sometimes what happens is people look at it with suspicion and say, ek haath se lena, ek haath se dena. But do you still believe that given what we've heard today and given the overall landscape that we've seen of the budget layout, it is a fair move and this will indeed reduce the tax burden on the middle class? Mr. Srivastava.
Absolutely. This will certainly reduce the tax burden on middle class. And I like the statement given by one of the gentlemen is that with the new 10,000 crore fund for startup, look, in the political world, there's always a pressure, create employment. How many large companies can you create? You have to create many more startups, sustainable startups that bring in employment. And even a startups, even if a startup ends up having a 30 employee, look, you can create 100,000 startups, but you cannot create 100,000 unicorns, at least in near future, right? So 35 into 100,000 is a large number. So that's something which is very impressive in the startup world for sure, and it will certainly give him, impetus to startup world, and hence a substantial jump in employment. Coming back to your tax part of it, yes, there's always a human tendency, when you get something good, you always have a question that there's something hidden. For a change, let's try to respect what has been given and let's try to do something as citizen of this country for this country rather than every time trying to find out another negative out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you another question about the life-saving drugs, since you are closely connected to the pharmaceutical market as well. So 36 life-saving drugs fully exempted from customs duty. Your thoughts on this? What do we make of this?
This is a big move. This certainly is a big move. I had kept that comment reserved for pharma industry. But anyway, since you've asked, this certainly, there are two big things that I've seen in pharmaceuticals. One is, of course, the removing of customs from life-saving drugs, because life-saving drugs as such are life-taking drugs. Trust me, they are very expensive. Okay, and a common man invariably has to go through a financial crisis to afford them. So least as a country we can do is, get the tax off it. But then I
Yeah.
also see one more component added, which is very meaningful, that pharmaceutical companies will get rebate by providing the free drug supplies into the healthcare system. So that encourages pharmaceutical companies to also participate in welfare program of the government.
Yeah.
But then, anyway, what you have asked, certainly, it's certainly the big, it is a relative term, but certainly a big relief.
Right. Closing comments from you as well, Mr. Amit Srivastava. But if I may also use the opportunity to point out two things. Capital gains limit exceeded to 12.7, and also the extended time limit to file the updated return from existing 24 months to 48 months. Quick comment on that, please.
I mean, I think this is
No,
good
I
for.
wanted to, sorry, I'm so sorry. This was actually addressed to Mr. Setia. Yeah,
Sure.
as a closing
Yeah.
comment. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the very positive moves, wherein the tax limits have been extended, TDS deductions have been, concessions have been given, and the income tax filing extension periods have been given. So overall, the government as a nation is trying to bring everyone together. We are trying to move in that digital age where, people are now wanting to file their returns and getting in lines with the compliance that the government is expecting from the people. So government
Yeah.
is, putting one hand out. Now it's our part as well to take that hand ahead and work together in terms of developing the economy together.
Yeah. Absolutely. On that note, thank you so much, Mr. Amit Srivastav and Somil Shethia. Really a pleasure talking to the two of you, getting your insights, getting your perspectives, getting the clarity that we needed. Thanks very much for joining us. Let me then move on to our next guest. Mr. Abhishek A. Rastogi is with us. He is a lawyer, a jurist, also a tax expert. Good afternoon, Mr. Rastogi. Good to have you
Hello.
with us.
Thank you. It's
Let me
always a
have your
pleasure.
opening comments on the budget then. Of course, the biggest talking point has been the tax reforms, the changes made there. Is there substantial relief for the middle class?
So I think certainly yes, it was all expected. If you see my videos on CNBC, ET Now, and other channels, we've been very, very vocal and articulative. Recommendations had gone to the Honorable Honorable Finance Minister on this, and I think she had made a very, very pragmatic move. I think it's a bold step, pragmatic step. I would not say only populist, but a bold one as well, because there will be certain revenue impact on the collection, tax collections, etc. But I think there will be mechanisms and way. But believe me or not, this is a very practical and a bold move, also for a reason that it gives more purchasing power to the middle class. So from that perspective, I think it's a good news. Overall, the revenue impact will be reduced because the enhanced GST collections will be there when more purchases happen. So from that perspective, I think it will be a win-win.
Right. That you kind of answered the question that I was going to ask you, but if you can expand on that, because where is that revenue shortfall going to come from if the government has reduced the tax collection? Do you think really it will boost consumption, and that is how the whole idea is? That is how the balancing act has been done. That you pay like less taxes, leave more money in the hands of the consumer, and thereby have more consumption, more expenditure, which will boost the economy and bring in taxes and revenue through indirect taxes. Is that how this is being worked out?
So I think we have done some analysis in last couple of hours, and it is like this. The benefit which substantially comes is to the income group, which falls between 7.75 to 12.75. So that tax bracket gets the maximum benefit. Now, if you see the differential 5 lakh rupees, that income bracket, we analyzed some of their expenditure. I think the most important aspect will be real estate. because now these will be this working class, salaried people, income group will
Yeah.
be more motivated to buy their home houses to suit their pockets. Young married couples, fresh chartered accountants, advocates, etc.,
Mm.
and others, of course. So what will happen is the moment the real estate sector in this middle income group gets a boost, the
Yeah.
money comes into circulation. What will also happen is that there are tax impacts. So see, one is on the entertainment which this working class or this category of income group between 7 and 12 lakhs would spend. That is
Yeah.
all taxed at 18%. Entertainment is all taxed at 18%. And when it
Mm.
comes to essentials, talking about real estate, that is again taxed. Heavy amount may go into the investment in real estate. And
Yeah.
why I say the tax collection will be more, because even with the bracket getting the benefit to the differential of 5 lakh rupees, they will now be incentivized to buy homes where, let's say, if they would have bought for 50 lakhs for a crore. So on a crore,
Mm.
the GST impact at 5% will also be 5 lakh rupees. So from that perspective, I think it's a very, very positive move. I don't think the numbers will look that bad at the end of the year, because the purchasing power will increase. This money will go for consumption or for investment in the real estate sector. The moment we talk about the real estate sector, they will be taking some loans. This class will
Mm.
be taking some loans, and it's a circle. So from that perspective, our initial analysis says that on the cards, it will not be a loss of revenue to that extent to the government. So from that perspective as well, it's a very, very bold and a pragmatic move. I think finance minister has done a great job here. This was all very needed. From the
Mm.
consumption perspective, I think you think of a person who earns 12 lakh rupees. Straight, he or she gets 1 lakh rupees in her hands for
Mm.
consumption, for medical, for insurance, for telecom, for travel. So the moment that additional amount is there, all that is subject, most of it is subject at 18%. So even if 5 lakh more is spent, 18% on that is 1 lakh rupee, which is more than the differential of the tax which is foregone for the differential of 5 lakh rupees. So I think arithmetic says the purchasing power in that bracket will be very useful. And believe me
Mm.
or not, it's a populist measure as well, with some states going into election. I think it's the
Yes.
right move at the right time.
We'll come to that. We'll come to all the criticism that's coming in on Bihar being given a pride of place in this budget. But since we're talking about the urban consumer, the urban citizen, let's also focus a bit on the rural, because the credit enhancement facility by NABFID, if I'm saying it correctly,
Yeah, yeah,
there is a Grameen credit score framework. So the idea is to now develop that
yeah.
and bring more money into the hands of the rural citizen as well. Can you explain this to, for those of us who are not very familiar with these terms? How does it work? The credit
So I
enhancement.
think, so see, the credit enhancement scheme is like this, that if
Hmm.
your income which you have today, which is the disposable income, is more, which means you
Yeah.
will be able to pay the principal and the interest to a larger capacity. So if my net of taxes income is 10 lakh rupees, vis-a-vis
Hmm.
the net of tax income at 12 lakh rupees, the differential of 2 lakhs which I'm getting, I'll be able to obtain a higher loan. So because these loans are given with lot of, this credit is given with lot of different criteria, such as
Yeah.
age, why, what is the purpose, is there an underlying asset, how much is the income which you are getting net of taxes. Whenever
Hmm.
these credits are given, net of tax amount is seen in the hands of the person who's availing this facility. So from that perspective, the net of tax amount will increase, because there'll be no tax till 12 lakh or 12.75 lakhs now. So from that perspective, the credit availability will be more, and more money will come into circulation. So I think that's what the broad objective with respect to these credits will be. The
Right.
second element is whether it is
Hmm.
urban or whether it is rural. This differential 5 lakh rupees of benefit which comes to all categories of income group till 12.75 or 12 lakh rupees will ease the compliance burden. We have seen lakhs of notices which have gone to the salaried class in last 3 months, and these could be for various deductions which they have claimed, or for small mistakes or big mistakes, advertent or inadvertent, which have happened. Now, because of this, there is some sort of a trauma, on this income class group. Uh, the tax amount differential could be 5,000 or 10,000 rupees, but there are some penalties imposed, some fines imposed of 5,000, 10,000, which may not be too high from the monetary perspective, but still a non-compliance to anyone becomes a pain at the end of the day. So what will happen is, by increasing this number to 12 lakh rupees or to 12.7 in case of salaried class, a lot of people will now not be required to do compliances. So from that perspective, there'll be ease of living. I would not say ease of doing business. Ease of living will
Because
be very high.
paperwork is always daunting, isn't it? To do the tax
Paperwork,
filing, and so bulk of the population of
yeah,
income taxpayers are released from that. I get your point. Quick
absolutely.
reactions to some of the announcements that have been made. Let's go with the revised fiscal deficit estimated to be 4.8% of the GDP. Can you give us a comparative analysis of how this helps?
So I think fiscal deficit, the government will still try to keep it under control, but at the same time, please understand that there are certain ambitious projects, including the infrastructure projects. There are certain announcements with respect to airports and other infrastructure as well, which has been done today. The government would need money as well. So I think we cannot live in a state where there are only populist measures which are being pronounced, and then the government is left with no money. So I think, especially with respect to infrastructure, that would be required. So fiscal deficit, I think they will still try to maintain a fine balance with the spending and how much they would want to spend, and at what level the fiscal deficit will have to be maintained. But I
Let me
think
just tell our viewers here that by fiscal deficit, in simple terms, what we mean is how much the government is earning vis-a-vis how much it is spending. And if there is a very high difference, that's a high fiscal deficit. Here, the idea is to reduce that. So have we lost Mr. Rastogi there? Please try and reconnect while I just quickly bring in, this quick explainer on fiscal deficit, which our viewers can take a look at. Easily understood and simplify them for you. The first one is fiscal deficit. So when we say fiscal deficit, what does it mean? It basically means the difference between the government revenue and the government expenditure, and the revenue that is collected from taxes or other government sources vis-a-vis the expenditures. When the gap between these two figures are high, we have a high fiscal deficit. So what is the estimate this time around? The fiscal deficit is estimated at 4.9% of the GDP in financial year 2025, with a target to reduce it to 4.5%. And now when we say 4.9% of the GDP, what exactly do we mean? What are we referring to? We are referring to the fiscal deficit as a percentage of a country's gross domestic product, that is the GDP. So why this is important is essentially it means that the fiscal deficit is 4.9% of the total value of goods and services produced in the country. Right. So the idea is to keep our viewers also informed about these complex financial terms. We are trying to get Mr. Rastogi back into the show. But meanwhile, let's play out some more reactions that have come in from earlier today.
For the salaried class, yeah. But if you add that 75,000 standard deduction, तो 12,75,000, I think it is very big. Plus new regime में भी जो relief दिया है up to 25 lakhs benefit है. So that is, I think, for the lower income, it is substantial benefit, I can say, and government will be taking a hit of 1 lakh crore.
Rent income से भी जो exemption है वो 6 लाख तक है.
नहीं, OTDS का exemption है, so that is different. TDS में सिंप्लीफाई किया है, जो अभी आप अगर रेंट पे करते हो मोर देन 2.4 lakhs का थ्रेशोल्ड था, दैट दे हैव इंक्रीज टू 6 lakhs. TDS के लिए वो तो TDS होता है, आपको सामने वाले को क्रेडिट मिल जाता है.
Okay, so I think Mr. Abhishek Rastogi is back with us. Sorry, we lost you in between. Imran, please remove super. Yeah, I think we have Mr. Abhishek Rastogi back with us, but I can't see him in the frame. Is he visible? I don't think so. Okay, we'll have to fix that. 1 second. Yeah, now you are visible. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, please. So basically,
I was taking your quick reaction on the fiscal deficit revised figure. The projection was 4.9. The government has given us a figure of 4.8 of the GDP.
So I think, to me, what is more important is that these infrastructure development projects which are there, the government must continue its focus on these projects and spend in terms of this infrastructure development, including the technological advancements and research and development spendings which must happen. Because it must not happen that we are trying to reduce the fiscal deficit, but not
Yeah.
spend on these essential elements. So, from the technology perspective, the R&D, I think today the world is very keenly watching that how and what India's role will be there for advanced technologies, for artificial intelligence, and how we react to certain of these sectors, such as online gaming, etc. Because the endeavor remains that India must become the online gaming hub. So I think from the judicial perspective, from the policy reform perspective, where key decisions will have to be taken to uh, improve the performance of certain sectors, including tax benefits, incentives, and to close the litigation by having a transparent tax policies will be the key factor. I think fiscal deficit 0.1% here and there will not make much of a difference till the time certain of these sectors get the boost.
Right, like you said, with the tax compliance, if that is ensured, and those tax evasion can be reduced, there is a lot to be gained. The second point I want your reaction on is the capital expenditure at 10.18 lakh crore. Again, I believe not much change from the last budget. So, not too much of emphasis has been given to increase the capex. Why is that so?
See, I think capital expenditure they want to keep more or less at a constant figure. Also, for a reason that there could be other revenue expenditure as well, which could be relevant. Also, if the moment the capital expenditure increases, there is a direct correlation with the fiscal deficit. So the
Yes.
government will keep a close watch on tax buoyancy, the tax to GDP ratios, and what is the overall impact on some of these announcements which have been made on the direct tax side. Now, if the consumption increases, the taxable consumption and the taxable basket of the indirect taxes increases, then I think the government will have more power to spend money and possibly, even increase the capital expenditure in the next budget. But I think this year, with some, these populist announcements being made, there is an expected cut on the revenue collection on the direct tax side. The government wants to play a little conservative, but I think that's absolutely okay till the time that conservation is for the capital expenditure. So from that perspective, I think it is decent number which has been announced.
Okay. The third point, I want also your comment on the market borrowings. Why is this significant? What does it indicate? If you can break down this particular aspect for us, which the government has announced at 14.82 lakh.
See, market borrowings otherwise are, again linked to how you would want to conduct your businesses, how much you want to borrow, what is the investment appetite, and how much borrowing would lead to what results. So I think from that perspective, the government again has done a pragmatic thing by keeping the market borrowings at that rate.
Right. There is this connected concern of the national debt. And again, we come back to the related concept of fiscal deficit, which you have explained. But in terms of overall, if I may take your view on the priorities set by the government and the point that you raised on whether a close eye has been kept on the election bound state, let me in fact bring up that point on our screens about the cotton crop and the Makhna point about the Bihar, the state of Bihar, where the government has laid special emphasis and given important reductions. I'll try and put that up on our screen, but please go ahead and tell us that, whether there is a fair reaction to this point about how the government is looking at one state in particular, the Makhna board in Bihar, to improve production, processing, value addition, and marketing of
So,
this particular crop. Is there an unfair emphasis on an election bound state?
hello.
Yes, I was asking you about the point about why Bihar is in special focus and certain crops there are being given concessions,
I can't
uh,
hear.
focus. Okay, is my audio? Am I not audible to you? Am I audible to you, Mr. Rastogi? Am I audible to you? I don't know if the problem is that you're in. Am I audible to you? Okay, let's fix that. In the meanwhile, let me just play some more reactions that came in on the
जो
budget from
फिजिकल
earlier.
डेफिसिट है उसको बेटर किया है 4.
I think we
चाहे
heard.
वो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हो, चाहे वो सर्विसेज हो, चाहे अधोसंरचना हो, चाहे इनोवेशन हो, चाहे कृषि का क्षेत्र हो, यूरिया से लेके एक एक, चाहे बीज की बात हो, चाहे नदियों को जोड़ने की बात हो, हर एक विषय पर पूर्ण रूप से अध्ययन करके एक नया मानचित्र तय किया गया है। और सबसे बड़ी बात कि हमारे जितने भी टैक्स पेयर्स हैं उनको इतनी बड़ी राहत दी गई है, 12 लाख रुपए तक कोई टैक्स नहीं, और हर एक ब्रैकेट में आप देखोगे तो करीब करीब 40 से 25% की राहत हाई इनकम टैक्स पेयर के लिए तक भी दिया गया है।
So let me have closing comments from Abhishek Rastogi. Your connection is slightly patchy because I guess you're on the move. So quick comment on whether it's fair to say that Bihar has been kept in special focus because it's an election-bound state.
No, I think the Prime Minister is very clear that certain states may need certain additional benefits in terms of the allocations. For several reasons, we should not get into those reasons. But I think what is more important is that how this money is spent. And if these allocations are done to a particular state, we must see that whether these allocations are essential. And to the best of my ability and understanding, I feel that, these announcements which have been made with respect to, Bihar are pragmatic. So we should, get into those details of, why these expenditures are important. And from that perspective, these announcements are pragmatic.
All right, we leave it at that for now. Thank you so much, Abhishek Rastogi, for joining us, for sharing your views on the big budget day here on Free Press Journal.
Thank you.
Right, so viewers can take a look at this screen as well, where you have the new tax regime. In fact, there are two tax slabs anyway, the old tax regime and the new one, and this is a new version of the new regime, so to speak. So you can see how the figures have changed, not much for those earning up to 3 lakhs per annum or those earning up to 3 to 7 lakhs per annum. For that matter, no change for those who are earning between 7 to 10 lakhs per annum or between 8 to 12 lakhs per annum. There are no changes there. Okay, there is a slight difference in the category where 5% is now for 4 to 8 lakh. Earlier, it used to be for 3 to 7 lakh. Now, there is a bit of a change there. And 7 to 10 lakh per annum for those earning in this category, 10% used to be the tax. Now that figure, that slab has been changed from 8 to 12 lakhs. 10 to 12 lakhs, those earning within that range earlier used to be taxed 15%. Now it is those earning between 12 to 16 lakhs. So clearly what has happened here is those earning below 12 lakhs have this exemption, and 12 to 15 lakhs, 20%. Now it is 16 to 20 lakh who will have to pay 20% tax. So this is how it is in the new tax regime. Let us listen into the reactions that we were playing out earlier. Here is
एक बजट है जो
Jyotiraditya Scindia
भारत को
with his
आगे ले जाएगा, और एक ऐसा बजट है जो भारत को केवल आत्मनिर्भर नहीं लेकिन भारत को एक विश्व गुरु के रूप में स्थापित करेगा। बहुत बहुत
दीजिए। नहीं, हम लोग दुखी हैं, हम लोग गुस्से में हैं कि हमेशा बिहार के लोग मोदी सरकार को पिछले 3 चुनाव से जिता के यहाँ भेजते हैं, यहाँ सरकार बनवाने का काम करते हैं, और बिहार को हमेशा ठगने का काम हो रहा है।
सर, लेकिन बिहार के लिए इतने ऐलान हुए कि आपके ही सांसद मनीष तिवारी पूछ रहे हैं कि भारत सरकार का बजट है या बिहार सरकार का बजट है।
नहीं, मनीष तिवारी जी को गलतफहमी होगी। इस तरह के कितने वायदे किए गए जब से बिहार का बंटवारा हुआ, उनको नहीं मालूम होगा कि उस समय LK आडवाणी जी गृह मंत्री ने बिहार के बंटवारे पर जब बहस हो रहा था तो उन्होंने वायदा किया था कि 1,80,000 करोड़ का पैकेज देंगे बिहार को, और बिहार को हम हरियाणा और पंजाब बनाएंगे। उसमें भी मनीष जी के स्टेट का नाम लिया गया था। तो आज बिहार को न तो वो ये मिला, केवल छलावा के अलावे पैकेज तो नहीं मिला। यही प्रधानमंत्री जी जाके 1,25,000 करोड़ का पैकेज का घोषणा किए थे, वो भी छलावा साबित हुआ। बिहार के साथ धोखा के अलावा कुछ नहीं हुआ पिछले 11-12 साल।
Today it was a union budget, I was thinking, but it was a Bihar budget, what we saw in the House. It was very disgusting and disheartening to all our Karnataka MPs and Kannadians because not even a single funding or any of the schemes have been announced for Karnataka. We have requested more and more about Upper Bhadra, IIT to my constituency, Hassan, and more and over about some railway projects and about some upgradation of national highway. It's very disgusting to our Kannadigas. Meanwhile, Honorable Finance Minister is elected from Karnataka as a Rajya Sabha member. But don't know why Finance Minister has deserted the people of our Karnataka. In future, I'm requesting through the media, our Karnataka people should learn a lesson looking to this budget because we were expecting more and more about some new projects in national highways or like something, and Upper Bhadra. Upper Bhadra is a very most efficient scheme for our regions of our Chikmagaluru, Davangere and other regions of our Karnataka. There's not a single rupee has been given funded for Upper Bhadra. Moreover, there is not in a single name has been taken up as Karnataka in this budget. Only Bihar. We were expecting IIT for Hassan, but it was given to Patna as in Bihar. And we were expecting more and more, but it is very disheartened. In upcoming days, Bharatiya Janata Party leader has to face what the budget has been announced today, and what I'm telling is Karnataka has 19 MPs on Lok Sabha and three more ministers of MOU. But why are they so silent about Karnataka has been targeted through central